In the following tutorial, we will go over how to set up TeamSync when using Okta as your identity provider. Now, it's important to mention that before you proceed with team synchronization, Okta must be integrated with your GitHub organization, and you must have integrated both SCIM and SAML. Now, TeamSync is not a user provisioning service, and it will not invite non-members to join your organization in most cases. This means a user will only be successfully added to a team if they are already an organizational member. However, you can optionally allow team synchronization to re-invite users who were previously organization members and have since been removed. With that being said, it's also important to mention that TeamSync is not a replacement for SCIM. SCIM is pretty much still needed for user provisioning. Now, for this setup, you will need to be a GitHub Enterprise Cloud organizational owner. Hence the reason why I'm able to see the settings. And from an Okta perspective, you must be an Okta admin group or a super admin depending on your Okta capabilities. Additionally, you must have Okta Lifecycle Management. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and proceed with the setup. I'm going to go ahead and access settings. Let's scroll down over to where it states Authentication Security. And from here, you can see that I already have SAML set up with Okta. But I still need to go ahead and enable team synchronization. Now, I'm going to go ahead and click Enable for Okta. The moment that I do, I'm being asked for a token and a URL. Now, let's go ahead and get that information. To get the token information or the URL information, I'm going to go ahead and access my Okta tenant. From within Okta, I'm going to go into Security and scroll down to where it states API. From within API, I'm going to click on Tokens. I'm going to create a new token. I'm going to call this token GitHub TeamSync. Now the name is really irrelevant. You can name it whatever you want. For me, it's just easier to identify this way. Now, for simplicity of the setup, I'm going to go ahead and allow any API that's reaching out to this token. But based on your security preferences, you can go ahead and fine-tune this to fit your needs. Once I select both options, I'm going to go ahead and click Create. Once I created my token, I'm going to copy this token. And I'm going to go back into GitHub. Click on Edit and paste my token there. Now let's look at the URL. Since I am using my admin tenant, I'm going to go ahead and access my end user view. And from here, I'm going to copy this URL. Once done, I'm going to go back into GitHub and paste the URL right here. Make sure that you do not have this / at the end, and you do not have any spaces at the beginning. Now, I'm going to go ahead and click on Update. Now, once done, you're going to see that team synchronization credentials have been updated. Since I've done this already, I'm going to go ahead and save my settings. Now, you'll notice that the option is already selected by default, which states, do not allow TeamSync to re-invite past members to this organization that were removed by organizational owner. Now, this pretty much means that if you had already removed a user from the org, and that user is part of your Okta app, or you had been assigned this app to the user in Okta, TeamSync will not try to re-invite them. Now, this is enabled by default, but you can change those settings. Now, if you click here and learn more, you'll be taken to the following documentation that will provide you a little bit more details on what are the limitations, what's the feature about, and some other information that you might want to be aware of before you continue with your setup. Now, one limitation that I do want to make you aware of is TeamSync does not support nested groups, meaning that if you have a group with other groups within it, TeamSync will not be able to proceed with the synchronization. Now, you can read more about them within the documentation, but I'm going to go ahead to proceed with the setup and click on Save. Now, what benefit does TeamSync provide to me? So I'm going to go back into Okta. I'm going to go under my applications, and I'm going to access my GitHub Enterprise Cloud application that I've created to integrate SAML and SCIM into my GitHub org. And I want you to notice that I have 2 users, but I have a single group called the admins group. Now within Okta, so my directory, I have different groups, which is everyone, admins, and Okta administrators. So what does TeamSync enable you to do? Well, what's TeamSync enabled? I'm going to go ahead and go back into my overview, and from here go into Teams. What TeamSync allows me to do is that I can create a team in GitHub and map that team to a group back in Okta. So that if I add a user to that group in Okta, and that group is assigned to the app, it will automatically sync those users into the GitHub team. This is pretty beneficial if you are setting access to your repos based on specific teams, or in the case of features or add-ons such as Copilot, you can manage your Copilot users by setting up a team and only granting access to that team, so that when you add a user into the group in Okta, it's automatically synced into the GitHub team that has access to the repos and to Copilot. Therefore, automating a little bit more your provisioning, but also the amount of access you want to give your users, all from a single source of truth, in this case, Okta. So I'm going to go ahead and click on New Team. I'm going to call this Okta Team. You can really name it whatever you want. Your description is all up to you. And then I want you to notice that we have the option called Identity Provider Groups. Now, this option only comes up if you have SAML and SCIM enabled, which means that integration needs to be made prior before you actually achieve this. Now, I'm going to select from the drop-down, select Groups. And now you can see that all of the groups that I have within my Okta tenant are synced. But keep in mind that only the users that have been assigned to the application will be able to log in. Now, this is important because let's say I've added the Everyone group, but let's say John Doe is not part of my Everyone group. There is no way that John is going to be able to access my org resources through SSO, because the moment that John tries to authenticate, for example, the user is going to get a 403 unauthorized access. So in this case, since within Okta, I do know that I have already provisioned the admins group, I'm going to select admins. And from here, I can change the visibility of the team. If I want the team to be visible in case somebody calls like @group name, they can be found that way. Or if I want to keep them a secret. And team notification, that if somebody adds the team, everybody that's part of that team gets notified. I'm going to go ahead and create that team. Now, the moment that I do, you're going to notice that it's one group's unsynced. Syncing will begin automatically. There's really no way to force that sync. Sync is done on a cron. That cron is on a 40 to 45 minute cron, depending on the time that you're adding the user groups. And that's pretty much how you set up TeamSync. Now, if I go into settings, scroll a little bit down to authentication security, you're also going to be able to see that you have one team managed in Okta, which means that the integration that we just did is actively syncing. You can click on View Activity, which will display a little bit more of what this is doing. So you can see what the team synchronization has done so far. Now, that's pretty much the end of our tutorial. on how to set up TeamSync when using Okta.